Hi everyone. Hopefully this video will help you understand what adjective clauses are and how they work and how you can punctuate them. Think of adjective clauses like you think of adjectives. Adjectives modify nouns and adjective clauses modify nouns and independent clauses. An independent clause is a complete sentence. And adjective clauses have a subject and verb. And we will also look at how you end up with adjective phrases when we take the subject out. So let's look at number one. The man who we met yesterday is a poet. The adjective clause here is who we met yesterday. The subject of the sentence is the man. The subject of the adjective clause, however, is who. Number two, we have Edinburgh, or Edinburgh. So Edinburgh, which is located in eastern Scotland, is the birthplace of Arthur Conan Doyle. Here, our subject, of course, of the sentence is Edinburgh. The subject in the adjective clause is which. It's the relative pronoun, we call it. The relative pronoun relates back to the noun in the main sentence. And then number three, the students handed in the homework on time, which pleased the teacher. Here, which is the subject in the adjective clause, relates to the entire information in the complete sentence in number three. So all of the adjective clauses in these examples have a relative pronoun and a verb. And relative pronouns always refer back to a noun that is being modified, or, as we saw in number three, to an entire sentence. So you need to remember who, that, which, and where, and also whom, and we'll talk about that briefly. So let's look at the different types. The first type we're going to look at is restricted clauses. So like in number one, where we have the man who we met yesterday is a poet, this is a restricted adjective clause, meaning I need to have this information to know kind of which man you're talking about, even though I don't know the man's name. And so this adjective clause has to stay in the sentence, because if I took it out, I would have sentence 1a, the man is a poet. And of course, your first question would be, what man? Who are we talking about? So we need to have restricted information here to kind of help pinpoint who we are talking about. So restricted adjective clauses are used when you are not referring to a proper noun like Paris or France or English or French or any particular person by name, or when you are mentioning a non-proper noun for the first time. Okay? So here in number one, we are mentioning the man for the first time. If I were to go on and continue to talk about the man and use adjective clauses, then I could use commas, and we'll get into that later. So here's another example. This is a little paragraph similar to something you might find in a news article. So a man who was found walking on Interstate 66 yesterday with his dog was yelling at police officers. The man, who was about 30 years old, was taken to police headquarters in Prince William County. Well, as you can see here, we don't mention the man's name, but we do mention him twice. So the first time, I don't have any commas before and after the adjective clause. So who was found walking on Interstate 66 yesterday with his dog is a long adjective clause. But I need that information to let the readers know what man I'm referring to. Well, now that you know what man I'm referring to, if I mention him again, now I can use commas. This is what we term a non-restrictive adjective clause, or an unrestricted adjective clause. In other words, you don't need this information of how old he is in order to know who I'm talking about. So when a proper noun or independent clause is referred to, the type of adjective clause used for modification is an unrestricted clause. What this means is the unrestricted clause can be left out without damaging the meaning of the sentence. So let's look at sentence 2. Edinburgh, which is located in eastern Scotland, is the birthplace of Arthur Conan Doyle. Now, so if you took out or omitted the adjective clause in this sentence, you would have 2a. Edinburgh is the birthplace of Arthur Conan Doyle. So this wouldn't affect the meaning of the sentence at all, really. We still are learning where Arthur Conan Doyle was born. We would be missing Edinburgh's location, but that's not the main idea of the sentence here. The main information here is to let us know where Arthur Conan Doyle was born. So in other words, this information between the commas, which is located in eastern Scotland, is considered additional information. So the last example of an unrestricted clause is when it modifies an independent clause. So let's go ahead and look at number 3 again. The students handed in the homework on time, which pleased the teacher. So as we can see, which in the adjective clause here does not refer to the students or the homework. It refers to the entire activity of the students handing in the homework on time. In this case, it is referring to the entire independent clause. So let's look at some different structures here. Some have relative pronouns. Some adjective clauses have relative pronouns as the subjects. Some have it as the objects. So let's look at sentence 4. The mechanic who fixed my car told me to wait for 3 hours. Well, in this sentence, who is the subject, and fixed is your verb in the adjective clause. And there's a rule in English grammar that prohibits us from, omitting the subject of an adjective clause when there is no verb to be in the clause. So if we omit who, this entire sentence makes no sense, and you can see this in 4a. The mechanic fixed my car, told me to wait for 3 hours. This isn't going to work. However, if you have an adjective clause with the verb to be, then you can take out or omit the subject as long as you remove the verb to be, and you would get sentence 5. The mechanic who is fixing my car tells me I have a long time to wait. Now we can eliminate who and is. This will leave us with 5a. The mechanic fixing my car tells me I have a long time to wait. Other adjective clauses have the relative pronoun as the object, such as in 6. The dress that she bought was very expensive. Well, you can see that isn't the subject here. She is the subject in the adjective clause. She bought that. So that becomes the object. And of course, that is referring to the dress. So the rule to remember here is that relative pronouns in adjective clauses can always be left out. And you can get 6a. The dress she bought was very expensive. Now look at 7 and 7a. The movie that we went to last night was boring. Well, you went to the movie, so we is the subject in the adjective clause. That refers to the movie. So you could leave that out. The movie we went to last night was boring. Well, how about punctuating adjective clauses and phrases? Well, one very important point when punctuating adjective clauses and phrases is to remember the difference between restricted and unrestricted. So if your information is restricted, as in 8, sentence 8, don't use commas. But if information is unrestricted, then use commas, as we see in 9. Number 8, the woman who I met on the train was going to New York. Now again, we don't know who this woman is. It's the first time I've mentioned her, so I'm not going to put any commas here because you would need to know something about the person I'm talking about, or else it would make no sense. It would just be, if I took out the adjective clause, it would just be the woman was going to New York. And your first question would be, who are you talking about? But we have number 9, someone famous like Lady Gaga. You are already aware of who I'm talking about. So if I tell you I met her on a train, that might be interesting, but you don't need to know that to understand who Lady Gaga is. So with Lady Gaga, who or whom I met on the train, was going to New York City, or was going to New York. So if I left that out, you would have this sentence, Lady Gaga was going to New York. Okay, well, you can understand that. So you can see how the information in 8 is needed to know what person I'm referring to, but in 9, the adjective clause is merely extra information. So I hope this has helped you.